The story of the man who touched the Ark of the Covenant when he was not supposed to is recorded in 2 Samuel chapter 6. It begins this way. David gathered all the choice men of Israel, 30,000. And he rose and went with all the people to bring the Ark of the Covenant out of where it had been for years into the city. The statement's made in verse number 3. They set the Ark of God on a new cart, but brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which is on a hill. The sons of Abinadab, Uzzah and Ahio, actually are taking care of the cart. They're guiding it, they're driving it. They bring it out of the house of Abinadab. David and all the house of Israel played music before the Lord on all kinds of instruments, on wood, on harps, on string instruments, on tambourines, list a whole lot of things. When they came to a particular place, it was a threshing floor. Uzzah put out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen were stumbling. It looked like the ark's going to slide off of the cart. Verse number 7, the anger of the Lord was aroused against Uzzah, and God struck him there for his error, and he died by the ark of God. David became very angry because of the Lord's outbreak against Uzzah, and he called the name of the place hatred or outbreak against Uzzah. So what kind of lessons do you have from this particular setting? Tradition is something that is placed over commandment. Tradition. It's been decades since they've done anything with the Ark of the Covenant. It's just been sitting in that spot where it had been left after the Philistines returned it. So the question may be asked when you start thinking, well, how are we going to move the Ark of the Covenant? Well, how did the Philistines actually send it back to us? In 1 Samuel chapter 6, they put it on a cart. Here's the way that it reads. Make a new cart, take 2 milk cows which have never been yoked, hitch the cows to the cart, take their calves home away from them, then take the Ark of the Covenant, set it on the cart, and see where it goes. The Philistines don't want it. They won it victoriously in battle against the Israelites. He should not have taken it in battle in the first place. But now they're sending it back. Well, they put it on the cart. So you're thinking, okay, individuals that are going to move it from where it has been to the house of Abinadab, how are we going to do that? Well, let's move it the same way that they moved, the Philistines moved it to get it here. Let's put it on a cart. Tradition over knowledge. Tradition over the commandments of God, because that's not the way it was instructed to be moved from one place to another. Or maybe it's a case of something that is sacred or wasn't sacred, becoming kind of commonplace. It's lost its meaning. Doesn't seem that's significant anymore. And because of that, we can kind of do whatever we want to with it. It's really no different than any other piece of furniture or object that we could actually move. So let's just move it whatever way we desire. The sacred has given way to a feeling that it's not really sacred at all. It's kind of common. Or here in verse 6 and verse 7, when he reaches out to touch it, why is he struck dead? There's a warning. You're not supposed to do that. In fact, there are some very specific things that were stated. So now it's outright disobedience. So whether it is the problem of disobeying the rules or ignorance of the rules or tradition is viewed as something that's more significant than the commandment, or the sacred has really kind of become commonplace, those things, all of them are problematic. But how do they relate to Christianity? If tradition replaces what God's Word actually says, if what is sacred in God's Word becomes commonplace to us, if outright disobedience is something that's tolerated, if we take a look at what is stated in God's Word and we decide that, it's other people have done it that way, we can do it that way too, without checking, well, were they really right in what they were saying? Were they really right in what they were doing? Were they correct? Were they overlooking things just like we may be overlooking things now? Interesting questions. Uzzah lost his life because they were not following what God had said, and there are reasons why God gave that warning. People today may disregard what God's word says and then think, well, why is God upset? Why would he be upset? Our heart was right. If our heart's right, wouldn't we be following what God actually says to do in the first place? There's an inconsistency in that line of thinking which is so prevalent in our world. Lessons from the life and death of the man who touched the Ark of the Covenant when he was not supposed to. Some interesting implications for us today. Please stay safe. We'll talk again soon.